Stephen Krashen's theory of second language acquisition. Language acquisition does not require extensive use of conscious grammatical rules and does not require tedious drill. Acquisition requires meaningful interaction in the target language, natural communication, in which speakers are concerned not with the form of their utterances, but with the messages they are conveying and understanding. There are five hypotheses of Krashen's theory of second language acquisition. These are the main hypotheses. First, the acquisition learning hypothesis. Second, the monitor hypothesis. Third, the input hypothesis. Fourth, the affective filter hypothesis. And the last, the natural order hypothesis. The acquisition learning distinction is the most fundamental of the five hypotheses in Krashen's theory and the most widely known among linguists and language teachers. According to Krashen, there are two independent systems of foreign language performance, the acquired system and the learned system. The acquired system or acquisition is the product of a subconscious process very similar to the process children undergo when they acquire their first language. It requires meaningful interaction in the target language, natural communication in which speakers are concentrated not in the form of their utterances but in the communicative act. The learned system or learning is the product of formal instruction and it comprises a conscious process which results in conscious knowledge about the language. For example, knowledge of grammar rules. A deductive approach in a teaching-centered setting produces learning, while an inductive approach in a student-centered setting leads to acquisition. According to Krashen, learning is less important than acquisition. The monitor hypothesis explains the relationship between acquisition and learning and defines the influence of the latter in the former. The monitoring function is the practical result of the learned grammar. According to Krashen, the acquisition system is the utterance initiator, while the learning system performs the role of the monitor or the editor. The monitor acts in a planning, editing, and correcting function when three specific conditions are met. First, the second language learner has sufficient time at their disposal. Second, they focus on form or think about correctness. Third, they know the rule. It appears that the role of conscious learning is somewhat limited in second language performance. According to Krashen, the role of the monitor is minor, being used only to correct deviation from normal speech and to give speech a more polished appearance. Krashen also suggests that there is individual variation among language learners with regard to monitor use. He distinguishes those learners that use the monitor all the time or overusers, those learners who have not learned or who prefer not to use their conscious knowledge or underusers, and those learners that use the monitor appropriately or the optimal users. An evaluation of the person's psychological profile can help to determine to what group they belong. Usually, extroverts are underusers, while introverts and perfectionists are overusers. Lack of self-confidence is frequently related to the overuse of the monitor. The third one is the input hypothesis, Krashen's attempt to explain how the learner acquires a second language, how second language acquisition takes place. The input hypothesis is only concerned with acquisition, not learning. According to this hypothesis, the learner improves and progresses along the natural order. When he or she receives second language input, that is one step beyond his or her current stage of linguistic competence. For example, if a learner is at a stage I, then acquisition takes place when he or she is exposed to comprehensible input that belongs to level I plus 1. Since not all of the teacher learners can be at the same level of linguistic competence at the same time, Krashen suggests that natural communicative input is the key to designing a syllabus, ensuring in this way that each learner will receive some I plus 1 input that is appropriate for his or her current stage of linguistic competence. The fourth one is the affective filter hypothesis, embodies Krashen's view that a number of affective variables play a facilitative but not causal role in a second language acquisition. These variables include motivation, self-confidence, anxiety, and personality traits. Russian claims that learners with high motivation, self-confidence, a good self-image, a low level of anxiety, and extroversion are better equipped for success in second language acquisition. Low motivation, low self-esteem, anxiety, introversion, and inhibition can raise the affective filter and form a mental block that prevents comprehensible input from being used for acquisition. In other words, when the filter is up, it impedes language acquisition. On the other hand, positive affect is necessary but not sufficient on its own for acquisition to take place. Finally, the less important is that the natural order hypothesis is based on research findings by Dole and Burt 1974, Fathman 1975, Makino 1980, cited in Krashen 1987, which suggested that the acquisition of grammatical structures follows a natural order, which is predictable. For a given language, some grammatical structures tend to be acquired early while others late. These orders seem to be independent of the learner's age. L1 background, condition of exposure, and although the agreement between individual acquirers was not always 100% in the studies, there were statistically significant similarities that reinforced the existence of a natural order of language acquisition. Krashen, however, points out that the implication of the natural order hypothesis is not that a language program syllabus should be based on the order found in the studies. In fact, he rejects grammatical sequencing when the goal is language acquisition.